Apple-apple-cheer.
Say it again.
Apple-apple-cheer.
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 Apple-apple-cheer. The fanciest apple latte in the galaxy. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kevin, I'm a geek. You're watching Kevin the Geek, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. Now the date I'm recording this is actually the 13th anniversary of this episode airing. I'm recording this on the 10th of September. I'm due to release it about a week from now. It just so happened to coincide with that day. I didn't plan it or anything, just because I'm so busy this kind of upcoming week through babysitting and other things. So I had to record it early, and quite aptly, I then managed to watch this on the 13th anniversary of the original air date. And this is a reaction, sorry, not a reaction, rather, a review that I've been looking forward to for quite a while, because Series 6 has been a mixed bag of stuff that I've seen a lot of, some that I've not really seen that much of, and often not for a very long period of time. And those ones that I hadn't seen for a long period of time, I didn't really remember that much of them coming into this. This is another one that I've not watched for quite a while, but I did remember quite a lot of it. Surprisingly more than I thought. I thought it might be one of those that I more remembered stuff towards the conclusion of the episode more than throughout. But there was also some stuff that I picked up on that I hadn't really noticed before. Now, this is an episode which is really a character-driven episode, more so than any others. So a lot of the talking that I'm going to do about the characters and the story and the dialogue and stuff like that, I'll leave until a little bit later. So of course, if you are new, please do subscribe, please turn on notifications, consider joining the Patreon, all the usual bits and bobs. But please do make sure you stick around towards the end of the episode, because what I always do with my Doctor Who reviews is I give my scores out of a possible score of 100. I give 10 categories a score out of 10. And I use that to be able to, when it comes to the end of a series or the end of a showrunner's run, I can use it to help me actually rank the episodes in a fair and consistent way. So make sure you stick around to the end of the episode, because, yeah, this is going to be a very high scoring episode. A really high scoring episode. So, first of all, I think one of the things I probably want to talk about is not something that I delve into a huge amount when I do these kind of reviews. And these are two of the categories where I talk about the set and the costumes. Because a lot of cases, unless it's really a historical piece, I can't really talk that much about the costumes. And the sets often it's like, well, it's an outdoor place or it's modern day. And yeah, I don't really have that much to really say about it. So often they can be just sort of more of a general kind of average score. Here, no. So from a terms of costume, of course, one of which I'm going to talk about prosthetics for, spoiler alert, old Amy, because we of course have two Amys within the story. So in terms of the set, what I love is how varied it is, and it really goes a great length to show you the differences. You have the very clean, crisp kind of waiting room area, you have the clean, crisp lobby area, which I believe is actually pretty much the same location or the same set that was used in New Earth, the first story with David Tennant and of course Billie Piper back in series 2. I'm pretty sure it looks virtually the same, just redressed a little bit differently. But then of course you have the garden, which is a wonderful piece in itself. You have just the normal kind of look of a garden with some sort of old style buildings attached to it, but then of course they've added in presumably some CGI, kind of the big fancy trees in the background. It just gives you something a little bit different there. But then of course you can go inside, and it's very much, it feels like an airport terminal when you've gone through security and you're now just waiting for the end and waiting for that moment that you can move on to the next stage of your journey, which I think is quite apt, considering that is effectively what is happening to you when you are in this, two-stream facility. You are effectively waiting to move on to the next stage, which unfortunately means death, which is less than a happy thought. But of course you have the kind of the dark and grungy area. But what I really love is the area that old Amy has built up for herself. The place where she cannot be detected by the handbots. The place where she has her pet, the robot Rory. What I love is if you look at it, it feels like it is Amy's attempt at making it look as much as possible like a TARDIS. You've got some of the round things kind of dotted around that she's presumably scavenged from other places around the facility and things, to make it as much like the TARDIS as she possibly can, because in reality that is the closest thing that she's had to a home for quite a long time, with her journeys with the Doctor and of course with Rory. So there's a lot of those just aesthetics that I think can often be really overlooked, but I really appreciated what they did with them here. In terms of the costumes, I loved what they gave to old Amy, this sort of patchwork quilt of a sort of samurai warrior, again all purpose from bits that she's scavenged from the handbots or from other areas around the facility. I think it just looks great. And then of course, if we talk about Amy herself, now one of the decisions that they had to make when making this episode, do we have Karen Gillan playing the older version of Amy Pond, put her in prosthetics, make her perform it in a different way to how she plays young Amy? Or do you get an alternative actress in to, again, be that older version of Amy? And I think they made the right choice. Mostly, I think, because of the ending and how the ending works. I think if you had used a different actress, even though you may be thinking, yes, it's Amy, I think at the back of your mind, you're still thinking, it's not Amy in reality, so I think they made the right choice. But what I really love is some subtle things that Karen Gillan did as a performer. She changed the vocal tone of her voice. She sort of brought it down into a lower register, which just makes sense with her being an older person. When she's young, she's all happy and she's got a much lighter voice, but no, she's been waiting for 36 years. She's been on her own. She's probably not been talking that much. So in reality, she probably has got a lot more serious. Her voice is probably sitting lower down in her chest, rather than maybe being more, in her sort of head voice.
36 years, 3 months, 4 days of solitary confinement. This facility was built to give people the chance to live. I walked in here and I died.
So it's a subtle thing like that that I really like. And then of course they gave her a bit of padding and the prosthetics. She just made her look that slightly bigger, that she's kind of let herself go a little bit. Very subtle differences, including like the way she walks and the way she moves. Again, it's just very, very subtle, but it makes such a big difference in believing not only that it is Amy, but it is an older Amy. Now, musically, this is something that I'd never picked up on. There was a piece of music that played in this, which I believe is the track The Sad Man with a Box. And the reason I recognised it is because I recognised it as the music that was used during the regeneration of the War Doctor. Which I always thought was just kind of put in for that scene. That music has now become so iconic with me for that specific moment. I clearly haven't watched this episode since I've watched the 50th anniversary special. Or if I have, I've clearly somehow glossed over the fact that it's the same piece of music.
I'm gonna pull time apart for you.
Thinking about it in isolation, if you would say to me that piece of music would be used in this episode, I'd be thinking, why? It's such a sort of triumphant piece of music. It just doesn't feel like it would fit. But it does. Because it fits in with the scene, it fits in with the rest of the music that's building through. And the music is just amazing in this piece. Because again, it is a character-driven piece, and every single piece of music really feels personal. We have a recurrence of the piece of music that Amy has, the Amy and the TARDIS piece of music, that beautiful sort of fairy tale kind of music, and then you have some deeper, more somber pieces of music. Just all the way through, it is absolutely spot on with everything that it does. Of course, I do have to really talk about some of the main stuff with this episode. The story, the dialogue, and of course the characters. Now, the supporting characters is a category that I have when it comes to scoring these episodes. And when I first looked at it, I thought, is there even really a supporting character? I mean, of course, you've got that sort of welcome host lady who, very, very briefly appears at the start. You have the voice of the interface, but that's literally it. It's just a voice. And until I looked at the credits to see how many people were actually credited in this episode, I did not realise that the voice of the interface is Imelda Staunton, who most people are probably familiar with her having played Professor Umbridge in the Harry Potter movies. I mean, the main thing that I've seen that I loved her in the most was a stage version of The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, Sweeney Todd, where she played Mrs. Lovett, who was insanely brilliant. So I never thought that she'd actually appeared in Doctor Who, and I always thought at one point, I think she'd be a good actress to be in Doctor Who if you find the right role for her. And she was in this. So yeah, that was a weird shock for me. So yeah, there wasn't really any supporting characters that I thought of note. And then I thought, well, of course there is. Old Amy. She is the supporting cast in this one. So obviously, categories-wise, we've got the Doctor, we have the companions, which I will basically include young Amy, for this instance, and Rory. Old Amy will be classed as a supporting character, and then a villain, really the Handbots. The Handbots, I think they were fine. I think they were aesthetically pleasing. I liked that they were kind of creepy, with them being all robotic, yet having that sort of, not quite human hand, but it was human enough. So it just gave you a slight unnerve to see an actual hand on an otherwise simple robot. But the one thing I liked with them, all the way through, it was a case of,
do not be alarmed. This is a kindness.
When it got to the end, and of course, old Amy needs to leave the episode. I'll come to the proper bit in a minute. But when it comes to her leaving the episode, when they come up and repeat again,
Do not be alarmed. This is a kindness. Do not be alarmed. This is a kindness.
It's actually very symbolic for that moment. It's the fact that old Amy has been rejected. She's going to be erased from existence. She's been betrayed by the Doctor and her husband, effectively. And so, for her in that moment, it is a kindness for her to be erased from history. But overall, Amy and Rory in this episode, particularly Rory and old Amy, were outstanding. Seriously outstanding.
I'm so sorry, but Rory...
No, this is your fault! You should look in a history book once in a while, see if there's an outbreak of plague or not.
That is not how I travel.
Then I do not want to travel with you!
I mean, old Amy, being an Amy who has had to wait 36 years in pure isolation, she is as tough and as brutal as I would expect her to be.
And there he is, the voice of God. Survive, because no one's going to come for you. Number one lesson.
You taught me that.
But I love the way that she is written, that she still has some element of her heart. She has still some element of the flirtatiousness.
Can you stop flirting with me? You're old enough to be my...
I've known you my whole life. How many games of doctors and nurses? Shh, don't get coy now.
She has some element of her humour.
They look ridiculous.
That's what I told him. Still, anything beats a fez, eh?
Which all manifest themselves in a way that feels real. It's not done overtly. It's not done out of the blue. It needs to be earned. The fact that Amy even says,
I think that's the first time I've laughed in 36 years.
it feels that that moment was earned through the build-up in this episode, and I thought the pacing was absolutely brilliant. It could have been a bit rushed in some instances, or it could have been a bit too prolonged. With some of the stuff I've read about, different characters they were trying to put in and the different order of certain scenes, I think they introduced old Amy early enough that it didn't feel too jarring, but at the same time, it felt we're not waiting for it, which could easily have been done in a way to be it a metaphorical point of the episode. But yeah, I think it was done pretty much perfectly. But the dynamic that Rory and old Amy had together was insanely brilliant. And just the story of them being kept apart and old Amy trying to work out who she is away from her husband, away from the Doctor. It shows that Amy is just as brilliant as she's always been. But just the writing in this is top tier. Every piece of dialogue felt so meticulously crafted. It felt that they want to make sure you land the point that every single line is being made. And with some episodes you feel, oh, that could have just been a throwaway line, they're just kind of thrown in there. But this one feels so meticulous in every single little detail from start to finish. Now, I realise I'm nearly 20 minutes into this review, and I've not even really mentioned the Doctor. For the most part, the Doctor was average. He was fine. He was functional. They obviously put him in the TARDIS and they created this whole Chen 7 thing as a way of minimizing how much time he needed to be on set so that he could focus on some of the other stuff, which of course, you know, he was involved much heavier in. So it was a good way of being able to do that, and it didn't feel like it was a Doctor Light episode, which in reality, you know, from a production standpoint, it realistically was. But it was able to be that Doctor Light episode without being a Doctor Light episode. But for me, the thing that bumps up his score for this one above an average score is the decision that the Doctor makes. You know, when Amy, old Amy, originally says, "I'm not going to help you. I am not going to allow you to rescue young Amy. Because if you do that, I will cease to be."
I will die. Another Amy will take my place. An Amy who never got trapped at 2 streams. An Amy who grew old with you. And she in 36 years won't be me.
But you'll die in here!
That feels a very real moment for Amy. It feels, again, like an earned moment. And that is what she really would do in that situation. Because she knows she is going to die. She won't exist. And it's Amy, but it's not her that will carry on living with Rory, travelling with the Doctor, enjoying all these experiences. Whereas she's had to spend 36 years in isolation. So the Doctor tells a lie. And he tells her that he will be able to bring her along and have 2 Amys. The TARDIS will support the paradox. And at that crucial moment, when Rory picks up young Amy, carries her into the TARDIS, old Amy sees that, looks at the Doctor, he looks at her, and he closes the door in her face.
I'm sorry.
That is just the most heartbreaking moment. But the most heartbreaking moment above that is her pleading with Rory. At first saying, "Please let me in. Please let me in." But then telling him, "If you love me, you will not let me in. You will not open that door because I will force my way in order to survive. So you need to do what you know is right, what I know is right, what the Doctor knows is right, and let me die."
Open that door, I will. I'll come in. I don't want to die. I won't bow out bravely. I'll be kicking, screaming, fighting.
I was cut up. I was in floods of tears in this episode. It is just such a heartbreaking episode. It truly is. It cuts you deep. It cuts you real deep, this episode. And if you can watch this episode and not cry, you're dead inside, in my personal opinion. Oh, there's got to be something wrong with you. You can't watch this and really shed a tear, because it is just so perfectly done. It is an episode which is as close to perfect as it's probably possible to get. So, with that being said, these are my scores for The Girl Who Waited. And so, this episode has scored 97 marks out of 100, which to date makes it the first and only episode to get a perfect grade of A++++. Oh, it was literally the fact that the villains weren't really villains. You know, they were good and they were effective in what they needed to do for this. But the villains were not the focus of this episode. And I think, again, maybe if it wasn't, you know, the thing about the hand and this is a kindness moment and how that linked to the very ending. Otherwise, it might have been just about an average score and it might have got a 5 out of 10, which would have made it still joint first with, I think it was Midnight. I think Midnight is my previous highest scoring episode. But now this is the highest scoring episode that I've done so far for Doctor Who. And it is going to take a monster of an episode in order to be able to top this score. But I look forward to seeing if it can be done. So next week on the channel, I am going to be doing the episode, The God Complex, which is definitely one that I'm pretty sure I've only ever watched the once. So similar to Night Terrors when I did that last week, this will be very fresh for me, very new, almost like watching an episode for the very first time. So I'm looking forward to it. But of course, don't forget to check out all of my other content. I've done some Doctor Who rankings, not for a little while, admittedly so. I've got a couple sort of being worked on in the background, and hopefully I'll be able to get some done soon. I've done, of course, Doctor Who reactions, both classic Who and new Who, and of course I do other reactions as well. So I really hope that you check out all the rest of my content, that you subscribe if you haven't done so already, that you turn on the notification bell, you consider joining the Patreon to help me improve the content of the channel. But most importantly, I just thank you for watching. And for now, my name is Kevin. I am a geek, and you've been watching Kevin the Geek.